it's funny. I'm actually about to talk at one of the like well-known film schools here in Los Angeles later this week, and I'm debating how much I like talk about that or not, because like they're already there. But to other people, look, I don't think there's any one way to do anything, right? So like I think film school is probably honestly for most people a better path. Like, to speak frankly, like I know a lot of friends that have gone to film school and have had success way quicker and part of it for me was in my early 20s. I still, and not that I couldn't have gone to film school later, but like when a lot of my friends went, I didn't really, I hadn't committed in my heart yet to like pursuing my passion. And I think that's the biggest thing is like I still, everyone has their own timeline. I've always thought of myself as like a late bloomer in this, and I have no problem with that. I think if there's something really kismet about the way it has unfolded. But some people that I knew just were totally committed to the film lane and knew that that's what they wanted to do no matter what. And right out of the gate, right out of college, they went to film school, and right out of film school, they're working. So everyone has their own path. What I will say is, whether you go to film school or not, especially if you're earlier in your career and you're figuring out ways to get things done, the ways that I made Jada and Feeling Through, which are the things that have like really elevated my put a spotlight on me to be able to work more moving forward, are things that I think most film schools would have said that's not how you make film. So like I think it's also being conscious of the fact that you're going to learn really all the valuable things that you need to know at a film school, and also like that are going to be what a lot of the sets you might be on later on. But early on, you're probably going to have to create a dynamic in a set that's not indicative of what you're learning in film school, and is a little bit more gritty and a little bit more like fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting too, that you've had like the kind of that winding path there, that sense that you started a little later. I relate to that so much as someone who went to law school and grad school and all these other careers. Like I wonder if that, if you feel like you brought a lot of those stories or experiences that you had from not, say not going to film school or not doing a traditional path, if that informed the last few projects you've made.
Yeah, I think I hear comedians actually talk about this a lot. Like the top comedians, like I heard Chris Rock talk about this. I've heard like Joe Rogan talk about this. They all say that like whenever they're doing like a new special, they need to just like stop doing stand-up for a little bit and just like live life for a little bit.
For a little while. Yeah.
You're so blinders on, like you can't have all your comedy be about comedy. And you can't have all your filmmaking be about filmmaking, right? Like, I think one of the biggest turnoffs for a lot of viewers, and don't get me wrong, there's exceptions to this, but like, if your whole world is filmmaking and like the things around filmmaking, and then all your protagonists are like, aspiring screenwriters and aspiring actors, like it's something that's a huge turnoff for like 99% of the world that's not doing that and can't really relate to it. And I'm not saying there isn't space for amazing stories about that. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is like, yes, I do think there's a utility of having a healthy degree of your life outside of that world. For me, I did what I had a path as a lot of creatives have, which is through the service and the food service industry. So, but what I will say is, starting as a bartender and a waiter and working my way up to like running my own company with a business partner, it's such an asset to be able to be a producer on your own projects. I wouldn't recommend being the sole producer on it, but it's a really, really integral skill set that'll allow you to really self-generate work or make things happen quicker. And everything that I learned about managing staff was one-to-one applicable to running a film set. So I will say too, like, don't feel like all of that experience has to happen on a film set. It's great to happen on a film set. And also there's skill sets that you can be gaining from all other aspects of your life that directly cross over to making a film.
Like through that process and then through making the film, you've exhibited a 3-part, fully accessible screening event called the Feeling Through Experience. You created a documentary called Connecting the Dots. You've held panel discussions, Q&As with the deafblind community. So walk us through a little bit from like randomly calling, you said, deaf organizations, like trying to learn more about this community that you'd interacted with briefly, to doing all these other things. And what was that journey like for you as well?
Yeah. The journey was, again, and this is like the, going back to like the advice part that we talked about earlier in this, I think um, I was very fortunate that when I did reread it again after cleaning up my desktop, that like, and this isn't like an embellishment for story's sake. This is like as literal as I can explain it. I had that kind of feeling firing in my gut that was saying like, you have to do this right now, to the point where it didn't matter that I had no idea how to do it yet. It was so intense that I'm like, I'm my something deeper in me is telling me I have to figure this out and make this happen. So that was like, I just trusting that was kind of the first step. I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about earlier on, I didn't really believe in myself enough to really pursue my passion in a way that like I needed time to really own it. With this story, there was something in me that was speaking so loudly that I'm like, I know there's a million obstacles that I can think of and a million more I can't, but like I need to find a way to do this. So I started reaching out cold to, I actually, the real quick story on that is the moment after I felt that, I Googled deafblind organization, called the first number that popped up. I had no idea why I was even calling it. And this guy picked up and he was like, hello. And I'm like, and he's like, hello. Because I didn't even know why. I was like paused because I didn't know I was calling it. And I said to him verbatim, I said, I don't know why I'm calling you right now, but I have a story to tell you. And I feel like after I tell you that this story, it'll be more clear. And it was on that call that I told him what happened to me. It was on that call that on the spot, I hadn't thought about this yet. I said, and I feel like I want to cast a deafblind actor. Like, is that crazy? And I said that because I still had only met Artemio years prior. I didn't know the community. And he goes, no, that's not crazy at all. You should reach out to the Helen Keller National Center. So it took me a while to like court them. But meanwhile, I was learning about the local deafblind community in LA by like walking into the Braille Institute, meeting everyone there, sitting in on the deafblind classes there. They told me about a deafblind living facility out in Eagle Rock, not far from where I live. Met everyone out there. Heard back from Helen Keller National Center. Met with them when they were in LA. We hit it off. They're like, let's do this. And then I would go back to New York quite frequently to go up to the National Center, Long Island, to meet their staff, to meet the deafblind students there, to get to know the community. And sure enough, over the 8 months of like quote unquote pre-production, it was really just a masterclass in getting to know this community and building meaningful relationships in this community, having colleagues who are deafblind, friends who are deafblind, who are now 3 years plus years later, people I still talk with on a regular basis. And during that process, as far as the documentary portion, I was meeting with a lot of people in the deafblind community, and someone said, oh, this sounds like such a great story. I hope it happens. And it would be so great to like do a documentary too. I bet that would like really help the community. And I'm like, that's a great, why don't I just do both at the same time?
Yeah.
So I just started, I didn't even have enough budget. We did a crowdfunding and we didn't even get a proper budget to do the like feeling through, but I still pulled like tiny bit of resource out of that and a lot of begging, borrowing and stealing to do the documentary alongside it. And started just trying to like scramble to find people who are available on a certain day to like come up to the National Center with me or like come to this like casting session with me or whatever it was. And what was beautiful about it is we ended up, this whole time we were also searching for the man Artemio I'd met in real life years prior. And
right.
We got to capture that part of the story in the documentary too, which the documentary ends up being not just a complimentary piece to the feeling through, but also something that gives much more insight into the deafblind community, and also something that has this whole other storyline of the search for the man that inspired it all. And it became really clear once I was finishing up or like not even finishing up, like just starting post, that I'm like, I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, now we have like, something that I'm hoping, and the film's about a little over 18 minutes. I didn't know how long each of these were going to be, but I'm like, probably sum total, it might end up being somewhere around 40 minutes. Together, they're a little under 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they're 24 minutes. But I'm like, that feels like more than like a short film. And then I was like, I'd met all these amazing people in the community that like needed to be highlighted and like given a platform. And also the ability I'm like, this is going to be so much more valuable if people who aren't familiar with the deafblind community like I was prior to this can speak directly with the community, not me. You know what I mean? I have plenty to share about other stuff, but like you want to hear from someone who's deafblind about things that pertain to the community. And really organically, this idea was born of like, well, if we did a 45-minute to now are like panel discussion and Q&A after, that's like a perfect feature length event. That's like a 90, 100-minute event right there. And I think something that would be really compelling for someone to come out and see. So it kind of just happened organically. And what was it was unbelievable. You know, we got to do 14 of those fully accessible in-person events prior to the pandemic.
Wow.
And what was amazing about it is like, we're going to do them again on the other side of this pandemic, because there's something about, I'll just take you to like the first screening we did in Cary, North Carolina, which was very emblematic of a lot of these. We had 50 interpreters and support staff to provide one-to-one accessibility for whomever was there. So we got as many people RSVP'd ahead of time so that we could already intimately know their accessibility needs, so that we had staff there already that were catering directly to those needs. So that was tactile interpreters for people who were deafblind and communicated tactilely, you know, stage interpreters for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, as well as, you know, closer vision ones for people who are deafblind but relied on a little bit of their vision, big open captions on the screen that were a lot bigger than like what you'd normally, subtitles that you'd see with a big black bar behind them so they're easy to read.
Wow.
Audio description available for people who are blind and low vision, which is just a descriptive track of everything visual that's happening on the screen. And then accessibility considerations to and from the theater. And I remember sitting in the back of this theater at our very first screening. We had probably at least, you know, at that screening, I think we had about 130 or 150 people, and probably close to a third, at least a quarter, if not a third, were deaf, blind, low vision audience members. And to just sit back and see so many people experiencing this in such different ways, and then getting to the Q&A portion where the very first guy that stood up was a person who's deaf blind who had the entire experience tactilely signed to him. And he says, first he said, I really enjoyed the film. It was great. And right away, that's going to change people's perceptions, right? If someone who's had a fully tactile experience, saying they enjoyed the film. And then beyond that, he says, and you know, people assume that because I'm deaf and blind, I wouldn't care to go to the movies. But I love this. I love having this shared experience. I just never had the opportunity because there's never the accessibility for me. So the very first screening we did was such a amazing, you know, bolding, underlining, italicizing of like why it was important to have those be the very first screenings we did before we submitted to film festivals, before we took it anywhere else. We knew we wanted to bring it to the community. And then it was very quickly echoed back to us that this was something the community really appreciated and really enjoyed. And it was also an opportunity, hearkening back to the event that inspired this, to bring the deaf-blind community alongside, you know, the general public and sighted hearing community to have a shared experience themselves and to experience this movie together, to dialogue with each other. And it was just such an incredible way to screen the film. And it's a paradigm shift of, I don't care if you've been to 10,000 movies in your life, when you go to one where there's people experiencing it in all these different ways, it's going to change your understanding of what it means to experience a film.